Well, thank you everyone for being here this evening. This is obviously the most requested and the most anticipated workshop of the year. And there's a purpose why we teach it at the beginning of the year, because as you mentioned, we're out of the holidays and we're all looking into ways of improving our health. What you don't know about tonight's workshop is this is part one of 4 other workshops that are basically going to be building upon your nutrition knowledge, if you will. So this is the foundation, because we can't explore things like preservatives, MSG, and all these other things without having some basic principles down, because then they're not as relevant and then we're not as connected with the new information. So tonight's workshop is about laying some the groundwork down, and then tonight you'll get the first story out of the 5-story building that we're going to be building when we do this nutrition talk. Now, what you're not going to get from me tonight, there is no newest, latest, greatest revolutionary trick to lose weight in 5 days, feel all the energy in the world, and look 20 years younger. It does not exist. So if you were anticipating that, it's not happening here tonight. So what you are going to get from us or from me tonight, and really whenever I put these workshops together, I think about what is the purpose of my talk? I mean, it's provide you strategies and skills and tools, but what is the true purpose of this talk? I mean, what is the overall mission of these workshops? And for tonight, my mission is to create a new revolutionary way of thinking about health and nutrition. Because it is with a new way of thinking, with a different way of thinking, that we were going to start to see things differently. And when we start to see things differently, we will act differently. And that's the only way we're going to get different results. And you've heard the definition of insanity, right? It's doing the same thing over and over and accept different result. And we are stuck in this. As a humanity, we're stuck in this pattern of doing the same thing, but yet we're expecting a different result. The good news about this revolutionary way of thinking is really, it's not revolutionary at all. It is very innate to us. It's something that we're born into. It's just that we were disconnected from it because we are living in an industrialized world. And really, if you think about us as humans and how we evolved from when we were hunters and gatherers to who we are today, which is these sedentary people, we're much like the animals in the zoo. I mean, we live in a certain cage that we're now adapting to, and we're adapting into diseases. Because the 3 top causes of death in our nation and in the world: heart disease, diabetes, stroke. Top 3. Not cancer. Cancer is number 4. Yeah. So, but even cancer, let's take even 4. Okay, let's take even 4. Here's the thing. These diseases are results of the environments we live in. We don't catch heart disease. We don't catch diabetes. We don't catch stroke. It is a change in environment. And you heard me talk about this in my other workshop. It's the change in environment, and this is just a symptom of our body being in a dysfunction. So let's talk about the principles of this and elaborate. So here's the key principles that we have to lay as a groundwork for us to continue having this conversation about nutrition. The first principle is that we as humans, every living thing, is just a collection of cells that is innately programmed to have self-healing, self-regulating abilities that lead it to exist in homeostasis, a state of balance, completion. And it is out of this homeostasis that we experience and manifest health and life. So basically, we're just a sum total of cells, and each cell knows what to do, and it needs to exist in balance, in homeostasis, for us to be healthy and to live. Make sense? The second principle is that our cells are pre-programmed to this. We're born into this self-healing, self-regulating, homeostatic environment. Our cells don't have to learn this. They don't have to read books. We don't have to program them to do it. They come equipped with everything you need for them to exist like this. And it is never they're never going to go into dysfunction unless there's stressors placed on that cells. Our cells are programmed with the recipe for health, and it is our choices and our environment that will determine if these cells continue to manifest health or they will go away from health, which ends up leading into disease. Make sense? See, you understand that, but then when somebody has diagnosed with heart disease, the first question a physician will have is, will anyone in your family have heart disease? Oh, my mother had it. Oh, well, it's your genetics, bad genes, right? It's bad genes. But that's the way we function. I mean, that's why we even have a family history. Here's one thing I want you to learn from me. 99.99% of you is genetically perfect. Only 0.01% of you has potentially a small genetic default. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have that default manifest into a disorder. It is about the environment in which that genetic default lives in, if it's going to be expressed or not. Again, going back to the diseases we're dying from. They're not genetic defects. They're manifestations of environments that have been too stressed that the body maladapts and goes into pathology or physiology. And I'll give you a great analogy of this. Health is a state of a consistent homeostatic cell function. Thus, sickness is a lack of constant homeostatic cell function, or a state of force of adaptive cell function. So what do I mean by that? Health is something you're born with. You have it fully available. And disease is just a lack of it. Just how darkness is a lack of light. Did you know that darkness is not an independent entity? Disease is not an independent entity. Here's an analogy. If you sit in a dark room with a closed door, and right outside of the door is a lit hallway, when you open the door, will the darkness rush out or the light rush in?
Light rushes in.
Right, because light is an entity. Darkness is just a lack of light. Same thing with disease. Disease is just a lack of health. It's not something that exists as an entity that you catch. So here's my question. If you wanted to make someone healthier, can you look for a disease and then remove it? No. So how do you make someone healthier? The only way to make someone healthier is to increase the amount of their health by increasing their ability to self-heal, self-regulate, and maintain homeostasis. Maintain the balance, because that's what manifests into life and health. Key principle: the function of our cells determines our state of health and sickness. The state of abnormal homeostasis is created by stressors. What do I mean by that? Meaning, if your cell is abnormal, it's not because the likelihood of it being because it's of a genetic defect. Remember, it's 0.01. It is 99% of the time because of the stressors placed on that cell, causing the cell to go into abnormal adaptation. Now, what are these stressors? All health stressors can be placed in one of two categories: either deficiencies in the required ingredients for homeostatic cell function, or toxicities that are driving the cell away towards its homeostasis. There is a wonderful book called Death by Medicine. Highly recommend it. It's an intense read. But it was a great summary that all diseases are really due by one of two causes: deficiencies in what is required for you to manifest health and life, or toxicities placed in the system that's causing your system to go into maladaptation and make a disease. 99.99% of the time. I love this analogy. So if you've been to my new member orientation, I talk about this plant analogy. But here's a better plant analogy. So how does this play out? Imagine you go to, what's a great nursery around here? Armstrong Garden? Anderson's. Perfect. You pick out 10 plants, same plants, from the same soil, same instructions, same seedling. They were planted at the same time. You take them home. 2 weeks later, you notice that 10 of your plants are wilting. They're never going to blossom. Let's pick them to be red roses. There's no buds forming. The leaves are turning yellow. They're shriveling up. So let me ask you this. Do you say to yourself, genetically defective plants, I would throw them all away and get some new genetically sound plants? Do you? No, you laugh. But we do this to our human cells, to our human plants. Anytime you're diagnosed with the disease, we go to the genes. And we say, well, you know, there's probably in a genetic code. We're the same thing as our plant. Okay, so you all laugh because you know that's not the right answer. So what do you do? So, I forgot to read the instructions. Oh, roses require a lot of sunlight. So you move all your 10 pots and you put them in the bright sunlight. And you notice that out of 10 plants, 1 gets better. So the gold standard for research, that we rely on for Mayo Clinic, Dr. Sanjay Gupta to tell us about, to report on. If we ran, this is actually a scientific research you're doing with your plants. If you ran it and published this, they would say that one plant that improved with sun was not significant, and we can make a conclusion that plants don't need sunlight to grow, to thrive. They would, because it's statistically insignificant. 1 out of 10 is not a statistically significant number for us to recommend that sun is needed for growth. But you wouldn't do that with the plants, right? You know better, right? So then you go, well, maybe these roses need more water. Now they have more sun. Maybe they need water, so now you water them. And then look, there's 1 more plant doing better. But guess what? Statistically, it's not significant. So Dr. Sanjay Gupta reported in the latest groundbreaking study that reports that sunlight and water are not needed for the plants. We dismiss it. But we know better. So what do? You check on the soil, right? You fertilize the soil, you add more nutrients, and now you notice, no, none of them. Just those same 2, no one else. So what have you done? What has been your logical reasoning steps? You address what? The deficiencies, right? Sunlight, water, nutrients. What you didn't address, and was the key in this experiment, is that your next door neighbor was spraying like crazy his plants, and the toxins weren't allowing your roses to blossom. See, but science very quickly gives up because we're chasing diseases and dismisses the deficiencies and toxicities. So when I talked about different way of thinking, what I was asking you, instead of asking yourself, why am I not losing weight? I want you to ask yourself a new revolutionary way of thinking, or a question would be, am I supplying my body the things it needs to function, to have a great metabolism, to produce energy efficiently and burn it efficiently, so that I may manifest the physique that I want to? See, it's a different question. There's a great saying that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask. Right? So ask better questions. So what I want you to realize tonight is that you are an ecosystem. And once you realize that, you will stop polluting your cells and start making ecologically sound decisions that are going to improve your health in your life. So tonight we talk about nutrition. And tonight we talk about some basic nutritional concept, because my goal tonight is not to give you a quick meal plan. Sorry, whoever said that. Because if you don't understand why you're doing that, you're not connected to it, you don't understand the physiology of your body, it's just another thing to do versus another thing my body needs. See, if you have a different philosophy behind what you do, you're more connected to it. Other key principle. And we talk about this, and you guys have been adjusted, so we talk a lot about symptoms. But symptoms, again, remember, symptoms are not the disease. Symptoms are signals that your cells are telling you, help me. I'm either too toxic or I'm deficient. And I'm going into an adaptive state of adaptive physiology, which will lead to disease. With plants, when they're wilting, you don't rip off the leaf and go get it from a healthy plant and glue it. We do that with humans. You laugh, but we do that with human bodies all the time. You don't just, pretend that color the leaf with green to look appealing. You laugh, but we do that with humans all the time. You know how bad we are as humans? We have invented ways to eat toxin, have high stomach acid, and then numb it with antacids. What other species does that to themselves? We're so smart that we're, self-inflicted harm, right? Key principle, in order to function in a balance and produce health, cells must have all the requirements met and be free of toxicity. So let me ask you this. If your cells are in homeostasis and you're giving them the things that they need and keeping away the things that can pollute them, can you be anything but healthy? No, that cell will always be healthy, right? So can you catch a chronic illness? Can you catch heart disease?
No.
No, right, no. So health is a simple concept. And I think I stated it. Supply your cells with the ingredients that they need and avoid the things that are toxic, and you will naturally express maximum health 100% of the time. It's that simple. But it has to start at birth, and it has to be repeated, and it has to be innate with us. But it's not late, even in our age right now, So again, to get revolutionary results, we need a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing. Once you start thinking different, once you have a different foundation, you will start to see things differently. You will really get bothered, and I'm sorry if any of you use this, by that lady at Costco checkout counter that has pre-made breakfast, pre-made lunch, pre-made dinner. You will see these things, and they will, cause like the back of your hair and back of your neck to rise. And once you start to see these things, you will start to act differently, and that's how you're going to get different results. That's the only way to get different results. So, moving on. I talk faster than I click. So let's break it down into nutrition. That was the opening. That was the foundation. Here comes the building of the first story of the stock. When we eat for two reasons. When we consume for foods, we need to eat only for two reasons. One is to give ourselves the nutrients, the building blocks, the ingredients to make ourselves renew and to produce energy. That's it. That's why we need to eat. Now, we added fun to it, right? I was just talking to a mom about her son she said, he just stopped wanting to eat. I said, isn't that interesting when kids don't want to eat for a day or two? They're just not hungry. Have you ever had a day where you're just not hungry? But we as adults have emotional reasons behind eating, right? Kids don't have that. It's really beautiful. They're so good at regulating until we teach them to be emotional eaters, So, but really our two reasons why we eat is for cell renewal, because every day your cells are dying and getting reborn, and for making energy. So when you eat your foods, it doesn't matter what you eat, if it's a piece of apple, In-N-Out cheeseburger, or, I don't know, give me something, or a croissant, your body, when you eat it, digests and breaks down the food into 3 macronutrients. And they are your protein, your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So let's talk about those really fast. Okay, your carbohydrates, we'll definitely see. When they get further broken down in your body, they get broken down into the micronutrients, really predominantly glucose. Okay. There's also glucose, lactose, maltose, different types of sugars, but basically a sugar molecule. Why do we need sugars in our cells?
Energy.
Okay, for energy. Anything else? Does your body utilize glucose or any of the sugars to make anything else? Just say no. No, that's it. Just say no.
I'm over here
Just
wondering.
just energy, right? Then we have protein. When your body digests it down, breaks it down into a micronutrient, it turns into something called an amino acid. So when you eat proteins, by the time they swim around in your blood cells, they swim as amino acids. Acids. So why do we need amino acids? What does our body utilize amino acids for?
Building blocks.
building blocks for muscle, right? We need it for muscle. What else do we need amino acids for? For nerve cells. Your DNA. For enzymes. And your enzymes are basically the keys that turn on reactions in your body. Right? Anything else? These are the majority. Then you have fat, right? When you eat fat, it breaks it down into the micronutrient known as fatty acid. And there's different types of fatty acids, just like there's different types of amino acids and different types of sugars. And what do we utilize fatty acids for?
I'm guessing the brain.
Brain, yeah, 60% of your brain is made out of fatty acids. So brain.
Skin, hair.
Right, skin. Actually, did you know that each one of your cells, the reason why it has this wall, a wall that's definable, is because it's made out of fat. And because most of the cells are 80 to 60% water. So how do they stay closed in? They have a lipid layer outside, right? So yes, cell wall. Cell walls. Other uses for fats in why we need them. Makes hormones. They're building blocks for hormones. So your sex hormones, so testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they're all the precursor for hormones are fats. Your adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, they're all fatty acids are the ingredients to make those. Next is also bile acid, right? This is the way for us to produce bile. So we can get out of what we don't use and we don't process, right? Any other uses of fat cells or fatty acids you can think of? They are great storages, long-term storages of energy. So when we used to be hunters and gatherers, we would go at times when we didn't catch food, and our body was great at designing long-term storage, and now we didn't eat for a day, now we break down fats. You've heard this, that after 20 minutes of running, that's when you get access to the fat cells for energy burning, right? That's why your cardiovascular activity should be sustained for a certain amount of time so you can get to those fat stores, right? So it's actually energy storage as well. It's also there to help us with adipose tissue that's built up of fatty acids is there to maintain and control our temperature. So that temperature regulator. Wow, this is a big list. So let's look at the Western diet. What do we typically eat as Americans? What you can obviously tell. What should be innately, what should we be eating the least of? Right, because they only do what? They only produce this energy, but guess what? This can create energy, and this can too. But why do we need fats? The list is much bigger, right? Can carbs do the same things that the fats do? No. And here's the crazy thing about carbs. Any sugar you ingest that you don't utilize right away gets stored as fat. So really, we can exist without carbs. So our food pyramid, the bottom, what's on the bottom? Grains, right? Grains, which are what?
Aren't they carbs?
Carbs, they're all carbs. See,
And
you're already
saying
thinking
that's
the right way.
amount. You're saying that's what you need the least.
Right.
Everybody says eat tons of greens.
Right. So we'll talk about that. So let's look at a typical Western diet. So we have somewhere between 45 to 55% of our calories come from carbs. And the form they come from, they don't come from fruits and vegetables. They come from processed grains, sugar, and corn syrup. The second thing we eat the most of is fat, and unfortunately they don't come in the form of healthy fats. They come in a form of grain-fed meats, which really don't have the same profile, fatty acid profile, as a grass-fed. When we were hunters and gatherers, that animal we caught has a very different makeup than what we're consuming today. And our fats come from processed dairy and trans fats. And all the things that make you go crunch, that French fry. I keep on picking on him. He's all the way in the back, but he's like. And then what we're consuming the least of, which makes up our nerve cells and our DNA, it's like the genetic requirement, is the proteins. We only consume about 15 to 20% of our calories come from that. And they come from industrial as marble meats and farm-raised fish that are full of toxins. We'll talk about those in a second. But what is our genetic requirement? What is our genetic blueprint? I told you, anything I'm presenting with you, sharing with you tonight is nothing new. Imagine how your ancestors live. Maybe don't go even as far back as hunters and gatherers. Maybe that would be hard to imagine yourself as your husband sent off, hunting.
My grandmother used to catch pigeons with the stick,
Oh, okay. There you go.
Catch one and she'd go in there and cook the pigeon.
Oh, okay. So you lived in a hunter gatherer.
My grandma.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, from Italy, right. So we don't even have to go that far. So think about what they ate. They ate, and you probably heard about this paleo diet, the paleo diet, and this is really the diet of our earliest ancestors that lived and walked on this planet. They were hunters and gatherers. So what we're talking about is a diet that meets our genetic requirements. It's not for fun. It's not for socialization. It is what our cells need to survive, to exist in that, have that self-regulation, self-healing, so they can exist in homeostasis. And so the innate diet, the diet that you innately are programmed to have, is this. And watch the distribution. Your fat intake should be somewhere between 35 to 40%, because your protein intake should be about 20 to 35%, and your carbohydrate intake should be about 24 to 40% because of energy, because you had to run a lot to get your food. Yeah, think about the amount of work you had to expend to create food, and some traditional cultures still do. Now here's another key, and this is where I have I bet Weight Watchers and all these other programs have a really good heart behind them. But what they get wrong is they don't focus on where these percentages come from. Right? They don't. And so what do they do in turn? You may lose a few pounds, but you're more toxic than you were when you started that program, because you're eating low fat, low protein processed foods, or those systems that mail you food. How can you mail people food? I'm sorry if you're doing that.
Metafast. You're talking Metafast.
Right. I don't know. There's so many of them.
It's all powder.
Right.
You add water to it.
So where should our protein come from? Watch. It should come from vegetable and lean wild game. That's ideal. That's what we can process, digest. Because here's the thing. Not only do you need to eat it, your body needs to digest it, and then it needs to utilize it. Okay, so this is what we are genetically programmed to digest and utilize. Our carbs should come from fruits and vegetables, not from grains and, all the goodies. And fats, which made the majority of our nutrient profile that we need, should come from organic meats and fish and vegetables and nuts. This is our innate diet. Here's the beautiful part. It's quite simple. If you keep this in mind, that fat and protein should over-dominate your meals, your choices get simplified. That should be your only constant requirement, is that your fat and protein should be bigger on your plate than your carbs. All right, so here's the second thing we need to talk about. Does that make sense why we need that portion? So basically what we want to be eating is in this 2 to 1 to 1 ratio, which we'll do at the end of the workshop tonight. Now here's another thing, what happens in a westernized society and why we're getting the diseases we are. And I know Deborah works for diabetes, so this will be really interesting as well for her, although she knows a lot, is with our diets being so much in this zone, and because these foods are empty, they have no fiber, okay? It's not like a vegetable where it has fiber, so the effects of the sugar are lessened. Because we're consuming this, we're going into something as a nation, it's a pandemic, it's worse than any other disease, something called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance leads to diabetes, but it also leads to cancer, it also leads to infertility, it also leads to heart disease, and it also leads to stroke. So if we were just going to eliminate insulin resistance and get people's blood sugars in level, we would dramatically increase life expectancy, and we would dramatically decrease the amount of medication that's given to people from these chronic lifestyle diseases. So let's talk about this pathway, because this is important. You eat carbs, turns into sugar molecules, right? They go into your bloodstream. If you've been to my sugar talk, you know how this story is going to go. And sugar is floating in your bloodstream. In any given morning, you need 1 teaspoon of sugar, collective sugar in your bloodstream, to have energy, to talk, to live, to survive. 1 tablespoon of sugar will cause you to go into sugar shock and die. That's not a big difference. So your body needs a really efficient way of removing sugar out of the bloodstream so you don't die. So your body has an organ called pancreas, right here, pancreas. I'm redrawing the picture. That releases a little truck. Who's been to my sugar talk? A little truck is a carrier protein known as insulin. It's like FedEx. And says, I have a pickup. I'm going to go in and remove the sugar, and I have choices of where I'm going to drop it off. So insulin will go quickly into every single cell in your body. It says, hey, do you need energy? Yeah, you do, so I take it to you. Okay, so then I go, and then next. So you're filled up with energy. You say, no, I don't need it anymore. So we go into the cellular level for energy. And once we fill up the cells with energy requirements of glucose, then we say, well, we can't overfill the cells. That's too much. So your body, again, self-regulation goes, store it in the liver in the form of glycogen. Now, glycogen, what's nice about glycogen is basically like a complex sugar. Your liver makes a complex sugar, but it's not too complex like a fat cell, so you can burn it really fast. So this is why marathon runners or long endurance athletes will eat like carbs night before the event, because they're storing up liver or glycogen stores so they can quickly utilize them, and they don't have to go into fat, so they can maintain their endurance for their event. Make sense? Okay. But here's the thing, glycogen stores, liver only needs about 24 to 48 hours worth of sugar reserves. So meaning like you can go 24 hours to 48 hours without eating anything else, and liver will do the job. And then your insulin, once this is filled up, your sugars, they have to go somewhere. So they go into fat. Okay? So your body makes fat out of sugar. Now here's the thing about insulin. If you had a piece of apple, you would never go into fat. Now let's say for dinner, you had an Italian pasta-driven dinner, and then after eating in an Italian restaurant, you decided to go to movies and had some popcorn, and then some candy. A lot of fat, right? It goes, and because there's so much sugar in your bloodstream, your pancreas is going to say, sugar overload. I am sending more trucks than I don't even know how many sugar molecules, because there is a stress. So what will happen now is your body is going to start to produce more insulin, and what will happen is very quickly you'll get a little too much sugar. So now even though you ate your pasta, you ate popcorn, you ate candy, within an hour you're like, I'm kind of hungry. Anyone ever experience that? You have a craving for something sweet or something starchy? That's why. Or have any of you had that kind of a meal and then felt really tired and sluggish? That's why. And so now what happens? The brain sends a signal to the body, get more sugar in. So now you reach for starch. Day in and day out, like living like this. Forget about the fat composition you're building up that somebody wanted to address here, how to get rid of that. What's happening is anything too much in your body's going to react to say no more. So now your cells are saying, I'm going to put a lock on the door where I allow insulin to deliver sugar. So now the doors that exist on the cells permanently shut down, and they won't accept more. When that happens, that's called insulin resistance. The longer that stays in, 5 to 10 years, pancreas says, I give up. That's called diabetes. So diabetes is not caught. Diabetes is a 15 to 20 years in making. And it begins with simple things like this, day in and day out. So I shared with you, now here's another startling fact about insulin. What insulin also does is interferes with your magnesium absorption. When Dr. Cameron tells you you can't relax at night or you have muscle spasm, what supplement does he tell you to take? Magnesium, right? Because magnesium relaxes muscles. If you're eating a diet like this, you're stopping magnesium absorption, and what's happening to all the muscles? They're tense. The capillaries get tense. They get restricted. And when capillaries and veins get restricted, what organ has to work harder to pump blood in your body?
Heart.
Your heart. And what is heart disease? When your heart has to work harder at pumping the blood to circulate around your body. So heart disease, if you ever got diagnosed with high blood pressure or heart disease, don't look at your mother, father, and grandfather. Look at the things that the lifestyle, the diet habits they've passed on to you, and look at your lifestyle. Because again, heart disease is not something that's hot. So when we talk about then the diet and really diet optimization, those are the two principles I want you to always think about. I want you to think the fact that you're a plant, and I want you to think about that you're a hunter and gatherer. And I guess 3 principles, and I want you to never forget the sugar principle. This is as simple as I could make it. It was pretty simple? Yeah. Right. And how you're going to know if the meal works for you is watch your energy. Did that meal make you feel more energetic? Because it should, right? You're eating for energy and cell renewal. Or did it make you feel lethargic, a little foggy, you need a nap? Then that's not a right meal. So we need a makeover plan. And the makeover plan goes back to you need fats and proteins more than you need carbs. And I'll address that at the very end, what you brought up. So we need to increase quality protein and fat intake. So examples, fish, poultry, grass-fed or free-range meats, eggs, nuts, not peanuts, they're not nuts. Seeds, flax, pumpkin, sunflower, millet, amaranth, quinoa. Olive, grape, avocado, or coconut oils. And try, please circle this on your handout, to consume 4 to 6 tablespoons of unheated oils a day. But no, I'm trying to burn fat, not create fat. Doesn't work like that. Remember, it doesn't work like that. Your body needs fats to function. Your body needs fats to produce enzyme, to have energy. Fats don't create fats. Sugars create fats. Sugar creates the adipose tissue we don't want. Raw dairy butter, organic yogurts, or raw dairy. So this should be the source of our proteins and our fats. Now, the biggest makeover plan or revised plan that we need, for those of you that want it simple, effective, portion strategies, this should kind of address it. We need to begin the day right. So I did a little experiment as I was preparing for this. Let me just Google the image of a healthy breakfast. This is one of the better ones. I saw Cheerios in one of them. So this is healthy, right? Most people, when I ask them, what do you eat for? I eat healthy. I eat oatmeal. I put some dry nuts and fruit. I have some coffee, and then I have, right. Let's break this down. What are oatmeal? What is oatmeal? Grain. How does your body digest it? Sugar. What is raisin? Sugar. Concentrated, yeah, dried fruit, but break it down. Yeah. Okay. What is fruit? Healthy, has fiber, but sugar. What is orange juice? Sugar. All sugar, no fiber, processed, like nothing good, right? So what is this breakfast setting you up for? Insulin overload. This up, down all the time. You're going to get tired at 11 and definitely at 3. You're going to hit that mental roadblock, and, you're just going to be craving for that, reaching for that Snicker bar or whatnot, the little stash, Halloween stash that we have like 2 years later, right? So if I'm going to ask you to do anything that's simple and effective to start dramatically changing your life and you're fulfilling your requirements, is change your breakfast and begin unless you have egg allergy, unless you have egg sensitivities, begin your breakfast with eggs and avocados. Just try to eat them without a grain, without a toast, and go for it. Have 3 of them, and don't exclude the yolk. God didn't put, sorry, I shouldn't, but it wasn't put on this planet if it was not meant to be consumed, By the way, in the yolk you have something called choline, which is a building block for your brain. Okay, it's the most nutritious part of the egg. So, and then a cup of low glycemic fruits, right? So blueberries, strawberries, all your berries, okay? So basically not so much low glycemic as low fructose fruit. So fruits with other forms of sugar and lots of fiber. So berries fall in that category, okay? So just do this for a week. And then let's see what happens. What happens at lunch? What happens by the time dinner time? Just revise that one meal.
Can you have almond milk?
You can have almond milk. Yeah, you can have almond milk. Other variations to breakfast. Well, I can't eat eggs all the time. That's boring. So my new addiction is like those fruit bowls, but I add protein in them, protein powder, and I add coconut oil, and I add chia seeds and flaxseed, and grind it up, and I eat it by a spoon. And it's like, those, they call them acai bowls. I call them berry bowls because I don't always buy that fruit. But it's delicious, nutritious, full of protein. You're adding fat through coconut oil or whatever oil you choose to do. And you have proteins, fats, and carbs.
So the flaxseed and the chia is okay?
Yeah.
Flaxseed. Take that every morning.
Yeah, yeah.
But with oat bran. Also.
No, not oat. Yeah, so one. And if you eat oatmeal,
Oat bran for cholesterol.
choose the steel cut oats or like the not processed ones, and don't top them off with dry fruits. Top them off with nuts, and stir in a tablespoon or 2 of your nut butter. So sunflower seed butter, almond butter, because you're enriching it with protein and fat. Slight alteration. 3 choices, pretty easy. The worst thing you can do for breakfast is not eat and then grab a quick, and I like bars. You probably saw me snacking on my bar, but that was a snack, is actually having bars or having baked goods, because it just sets you up for this.
The acai bowl, is it
Acai.
sugar?
So, but the way I make it, I add protein powder and I add seeds in it, right? And I top it with nuts. And I add coconut oil in it.
But you do use the acai.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, but it's a fruit, it's a berry, so you're getting more fruit. It's not what I eat every day. 4 out of 7 days I eat just eggs, if not more. Okay. All right, so the innate optimization plan. So focus on your meals being protein rich. Make sure that when you look at your plate, that 1/3 of your food is completely uncooked. Can we do that? Sure, we can do that. Make sure that 3/4 of the plate is plant-based. So what we're doing is adding protein and adding lots of plants, eliminating grains. So again, just look at your plates and just make sure that there's 3/4 is plant-based and then it's protein, and usually the fat is in a mixture of those two. Challenge yourself to eat at least 5 servings of different vegetables a day. So 5 different colors of different vegetables, because you're getting different micronutrients in there, right? Vitamins, minerals in different concentrations. Limit grains to 1 to 2 servings a day of whole grains, such as wild rice or whole oats. Okay, 1 to 2 servings a day. So it's not saying none, it's saying some, but a lot less than everything else that we need, right? Add probiotic-rich foods. So kefir, sauerkraut, kombucha, those are fermented foods. And the reason why is you can be eating all these great foods, but if you don't have healthy intestinal bacteria and the right pH, your body's not going to utilize it, right? So you need to have exposure of probiotics through foods, on a weekly basis to optimize the nutrients. Eat majority of your fruit in the morning. So try not to have fruit more towards the end of the day, or really high sugar fruit at the end of the day. So reserve that for morning because you're not burning fuel at the end of the day how you are burning it in the morning. And limit your dairy to unpasteurized dairy. So what I'm asking you to do is pick up some raw milk if you drink milk.
Almond milk,
Or almond milk.
get that out.
Or if you're eating cheeses that are not made through the pasteurization process, which is there's a lot of them. And the reason why is when you pasteurize and homogenize, what you're doing is you're heating at such extreme temperatures that the fats and proteins get destroyed, and the new configuration they take tends to be rancid to our body, okay? There's such high feed, and also we're killing all the naturally occurring bacteria that exist in dairy that help us digest it. By the way, we're not genetically really designed to eat dairy. That's why raw dairy is acceptable, because it contains the enzymes for us to break it down. So when we need pasteurized and homogenized, we're eating something that we're not fully digesting. That's why dairy leads to congestion, inflammation, right? Mucus formation, right? It can lead, yeah. Don't forget to hydrate. So we talked about sufficiency, how to enhance. So your body needs whole food. So, strategy is basically, you've heard this, shopping outside the aisles, right? Eating lots of salads, eating the things that the earth made, not Nestle or the Coca-Cola company. Right?
Okay.
So hydrate. We need plain water. With a slice of lemon, if you drink, that should be your drink of choice every time. A slice of lemon, plain water, but not ice water. Okay. The reason why ice, what happens is it constricts your blood vessels in your stomach and your digestive tract, and then you're not absorbing the nutrients. So if you notice in every culture except ours, they frown upon ice water. Right? Especially Asian cultures, they drink room temperature water. And with lemon, because you're optimizing your pH, so I highly recommend that's your drink of choice during your meals, because you need a right pH to break down the foods so you can utilize them. So you can feel fulfilled. The water of choice, because I'm sorry to say, and my dad works for the water districts. I mean, he purifies sewage or water into drinking water. And he just told me, because of this drought, the California board has lowered the safety standards for our water. So our water is going to be a little bit more toxic than it already is. So when it comes to water, the choice is distilled water, which I know everything's been removed from it, but it's the cleanest water. And then you want to add some trace minerals to it, or get a filter system with reverse osmosis or carbon filter to remove the stuff that's in our water, in our tap water. You can go the bottled water route. That would be like the second, kind of in order distilled, carbon reverse.
It says avoid bottled water.
Right, but that would be like the second best, right? Okay. Better than the tap or just refrigerator filter water. But we want to avoid those because, unfortunately, plastics and they leach their chemicals into the water, and you don't know if those shipments of water have been sitting, when they're driving those trucks, if they've been driving through the desert in the heat in the sun, right? And avoid drinking ice water while eating, which is going to be a hard thing to break for most of us because we're accustomed to that. Okay. So toxins. So Karen brought up the things she wanted to know more about toxins. So the second or the third class in this series is all about preservatives, and you will know exactly what they do. But for right now, the toxins that you should try to avoid are preservatives found in cold cut sauces and dried fruit. So dry fruit, when you buy it, just look that it has that fruit which you're buying and nothing else in it. Right? Because a lot of them have sulfates in there to preserve the color.
Dioxide.
Right. And then, if you're buying cold cuts meat, turkeys and whatnot, try to go to places that have their fresh roasted turkeys that they delied up, or they don't have nitrates, right? Sauces have a lot of nitrates, MSG. Again, different workshop, we go into great detail. What do they actually do on a cellular level? Trans fats are found in anything: chips, fried foods, margarine, crackers, cookies. Girl Scout season's coming around the corner. I always say, I'm going to give you $10. I don't want the cookies. I feel really bad. Breaks my heart. I want to take them all away. I don't know. But It's amazing. They're they're in there. MSG. By the way, if you're avoiding MSG, if you read the ingredients, it's also known as hydrolyzed protein. That's a deceptive name. So read up about that because actually some crackers have hydrolyzed protein.
I never heard of that.
Food colorings. So again, so we're talking about toxins. So we said we want fish, wild, probably fish. The things you want to avoid are shellfish because they're bottom feeders and they bioaccumulate toxins. And you also want to avoid tuna because it's a top chain feeder and bioaccumulates mercury. So mercury is very high in tuna. So, really limit those or avoid them.
What tuna?
All tuna. Yeah. You want to avoid aspartame and other artificial sweeteners. So if you're going to sweeten your coffee, sweeten a little bit of honey or maple syrup or molasses, something that's naturally occurring. Stevia. Honey's the best. Choose raw honey. Why not? Get exposed to like the local things so that your body, basically when you're buying and eating raw local honey, your body's getting exposed to and building tolerations to any local pollutants that you have, right? Or allergies you potentially could have it. Avoid fluorinated water, which is, by the way, in San Diego, I added fluoride 2 years ago. We were the only city that didn't have it. And then we added it. The same year, the ADA, American Dental Association, came out and said, we don't need this much fluoride. It's causing more trouble because fluoride, the safety margin is so marginal and so little that it can produce more toxicities. So avoid it. And of fluorinated toothpaste. So avoid silver fillings. It's the number one cause of mercury poisoning excretion constant in our bodies. Avoid aluminum-based deodorants. So look for something aluminum-free because you're applying it to the biggest pores. The biggest pores in your body are in your armpits and on the soles of your feet. So if you're putting something that's a heavy metal that your body doesn't process a toxin, it's getting, in there. So aluminum.
Just a real quick. I think, at least for Old Spice, if you use a deodorant, most of the time it doesn't have aluminum. If you use antiperspirant.
Right. So that's usually the person. You're absolutely right. So, but double check anyways. Right.
Recently, but I always be using it anyway.
Right. And avoid petroleum-based hygiene products. So that's your parabens, paraffins, right? They don't, because your skin is the
Oil, all that crap.
biggest breathing organ in the body. Anything you put in it, your body, it gets absorbed, right? New line of medication for women, for hormones, right, is the patches, right? So your skin absorbs everything that's put on it. Supplements. If you eat the innate way, if you focus on this, do you need supplements? Do you need a multivitamin, multimineral? No.
Yes, you do. I'm not.
We'll talk about it after the week's good. But I will have to say, you do need three things in a modern society. And the reason why you need three things in modern society is because our soil quality is not good. And even though you're eating innate diet, remember that plant? You fulfilled all its deficiencies, but the toxins overrode it. And if we lived in Colorado or some beautiful island where, it would be a different story. But we don't. Our air quality is not the same. Our water quality is not the same. Nothing's the same anymore. So the supplements I do recommend is really to minimize the effects of toxins. They're your vitamin D3 because it is your immune regulator. If you came to my flu talk, well, you don't have to come to it. It will now be on the web. What's it called? Vitamin D3 it's a protecting hormone. Okay. You need high-grade omega-3 fatty acids because our fish are not the same. And even though you're eating nuts and seeds and good fats, you're not getting the omega-3s that we so desperately need. Because I really try to eat a lot of fish, but it's hard more than twice a week, right? And you need probiotics. Because how many of you have sauerkraut on hand at home? Or kefir or kombucha? Sometimes, okay. Only a few times, yeah. So, but we grew up with these foods. Our innate traditional diet consisted of these vegetables because we had a way of preserving them. How did we preserve them? In salt and water that made its own bacteria and kept it fresh. And then we ate it and it kept us fresh and healthy, right? So that's where fermented foods are. So if you need anything, it's these three things. They should be the staples in anyone's diet. So I leave you with my last strategy, which is if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So you have to approach your eating, your nutrition, like you would do renovating your house. It is a work in progress. Do you do it all at once or take baby steps? It depends on our personalities, right? But anything is better than nothing. And think about meal planning ahead. Think about, bring out that crock pot. This should be your number one tool of cooking meals, because it's also slow cooked. By the way, the best way to cook nutritious food is a crock pot, slow cooking process, because it doesn't destroy the macronutrients and micronutrients. And cook ahead and have a plethora of washed vegetables on hand so you're not tempted. And then, clean out the cupboards of all the things that are processed. So it's a work in progress. And lastly, remember that health happens by choice, not by chance. And if you own that, if you own the plant model, and when you realize that you're that ecosystem that needs a right and healthy environment, you will get that health that you are seeking for.